Hey, folks, welcome back to our regional final playoff show. Our numbers are dwindling compared to last week. We've got two teams left in the region, uh, Corpus Christi Miller and the Refugio Bobcats. With us today is Austin's KVUE-ABC sports journalist, Jake Garcia. He's going to join us today to talk a little bit more about Austin LBJ. Jake, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. I know the last couple of weeks we've had a couple journalists up from the Austin area and try and squeezing us in really is what it is. We know you guys have a busy schedule, so we appreciate you taking the time out to come on and humor us for a little bit and give us a little more insight onto what Austin LBJ does. We had Rick Donthue from the Austin American statement on what 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Justin? Yeah, and he gave us a little breakdown on what he knew about LBJ, but from what we're hearing and from what you told us, you've seen them quite a few times this year, correct?
Yeah, I have. They're an exciting team to watch. And so, part of my job is to be out there with a camera and get highlights for our weekly show. And LBJ is always a team that we have circled on the schedule because we know that if we go to a game, chances are that they're going to do something pretty spectacular within the first few minutes of the game in that first quarter. And so they're a team that we had circled this year just because we knew dropping down in classifications that they had a chance to make a deep run. And so far that's come to fruition.
Yeah, that's what we've seen. So one of the things when they had this realignment last year, um, we kind of called it the little SEC is the district down here, 15-4A Division One. It was Corpus Christi Miller, Corpus Christi Calallen, Port Lavaca Calhoun, Beeville, Toloso Midway. They all made the jump down from 5A D1 and jumped
Alice.
into and Alice, yeah, correct. So we figured, before the season even started, we were kind of circling some of these dates and some of these teams. We before the season started over the summer, we figured somebody from this district was going to be the regional finals. We thought it was going to be against Lampasas, um, based on what they had did last year and what they were bringing back. We know they lost a few kids from last year, but we were half right in our prediction. We have a team from this district that's in the region finals, and they've all kind of have their own strong suits and things they do well. Um, a little surprised out of the outcome, what we've seen with Austin LBJ. So one of the things about LBJ, a lot of folks don't know, it's kind of a liberal arts high school, right? It's
Yeah. And so it's always super interesting to track kind of their progression as the season goes on because of them being a liberal arts school, they're actually split, or they were recently split into two campuses. There's the LBJ campus and there's the LASA campus, which is the liberal arts portion of that. And before this past academic year, LBJ was the only school that had athletic programs. LASA did not. LASA then launched their own athletic department, which took some of the numbers away from LBJ, which is part of the reason why they dropped down in classification. Even still, though, for the level of football that they're playing at, LBJ doesn't have the same numbers as maybe the schools in your guys' area. You will notice that 95% of the teams that they play have a lot more crowded of a sideline than LBJ does. And so football obviously being a game that's a war of attrition. If they're a team that suffers injury, they're one of the teams that maybe is not as equipped to handle those injuries as some of the other bigger 4A schools. Now, at the top, LBJ at the top of their depth chart, they're loaded. They have some of the more talented players in 4A, I'd say. But after those guys, their depth is something that could potentially hold them back, and it's something that has held them back in years past.
yeah, we
Yeah, I noticed that with the sidelines, they're very thin. And I thought for a little bit there, Latrell and Makuba going both ways was just because, I mean, you're talking two 4-star D1 college prospects, but then you actually look at them sidelines and it's very scarce over there, which is something you saw with Southside last year in 5A. They were scarce. I think even still, like, I mean, maybe what 33 kids for them suiting up.
I
So
think they suit up less than 35, yeah.
So I noticed that last time when I was watching some game footage on LBJ was, man, is they go both ways a lot, which, obviously I think Latrell and Makuba are good enough players to go both ways. But I think you are right, though. That depth, could be the little part that sets them back if they have any issues and whatnot.
And the other thing to consider as well, and not even just injuries, but just guys needing a break at some point during the games. I'm always interested to see if these games turn into these 50, 60-point shootouts. How often are Makuba and McCutcheon going to need to come off the field just because they're tired? And obviously they're incredibly elite athletes, but you can't expect them to play every single snap, both sides of every single game.
For a full season like that, no.
Yeah.
So the two names that we're hitting on, Latrell McCutcheon and Andrew Makuba, those are the names that that's all everybody's talking about right now is the two D1 prospects they have in the secondary, but they also have a couple more D1 prospects on that team, correct?
Yeah. One of the guys that I actually know pretty well is a defensive end named Brendan Jones. Incredibly smart guy. He had offers from Ivy League schools, and I want to say that he ended up choosing an Ivy League school.
Princeton.
After decommitting from UTEP. But he's a guy who I followed over the summer. He actually had this really cool story where he was working out with a personal trainer, but he was doing it in these very creative ways. He had 22-inch rims on the end of like a bench bar essentially, or a squat bar. And so he was in his backyard squatting with these rims that his trainer had kind of jerry-rigged for him. So really cool guy, really cool story, incredibly intelligent, and very well spoken as well. So he's kind of that third D1 guy in that lineup for LBJ. And obviously they have other talented players as well. Their quarterback, Oscar Gordon, he's left-handed. He kind of flies under the radar here in Austin with some of the bigger name quarterbacks at the bigger schools, stealing all the spotlight and attention with Klubnik over at Westlake and Yarnell and Edmondson at Lake Travis. But Gordon's a guy who, again, flies under the radar, underrated, but he definitely knows how to run that offense.
Yeah, I noticed Brendan last night when I started watching tape on him. Super athletic defensive lineman. He could almost pass as a safety at some points, or even just a very athletic linebacker. So I think that's part of the big thing for me with LBJ is their defensive line is so athletic and they're long. I noticed in two games, I think that 24 in one game I watched, and he would probably be the he doesn't fit that D line if you look at him across the board. But then I saw number 55 in against line passes, and he fits the defensive line. They're all at least about 6 foot, super athletic guys, and to me that's the strongest part of LBJ's defense is not just that you have Makuba and McCutcheon at corner and safety, but the fact that defensive line, if you watch them some of their games, they're very fast to get pressure on offensive lines. They did it to line passes, which I think line passes had a great offensive line. They did it to, what game was I? Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg was when I watched them play, so I kind of expected that. But I was impressed at how they disrupted the line passes as offensive line for how good of an offensive line passes did have. So I do think, to me personally, that's the strong point in LBJ is just the fact that defensive line is super athletic. And I didn't get to watch the Cal Allen game, but if I were to guess, that was probably a big factor was how athletic they were up front. And I think they're on a 4-2-5. So you tend to see them bring in like a corner or safety to kind of drop down that fourth lineman role. And then you have two true linebackers. So they're very quick. And I think that's honestly what killed Cal Allen was the fact that they had so much athleticism up front and Callan's not used to seeing that. And that's what they overpowered him with. But going back to what you're talking about with Makuba and McCutcheon playing every play, I think that's where Miller's got a decent chance here in the fact that they're a high-powered offense with a lot of weapons, and they're going to put you across the field. They're going to stretch the field, right? So you're going to have to keep up with them 50, 60-point type games. I'll be curious to see how the Miller offensive line does against that D-line. I think Miller O-line is really good. This is probably the most athletic D-line they're going to face all year, though. So there's a lot of interesting matchups across the board. And then obviously, we have Lloyd and Lloyd and Lonnie Atkinson, which I would assume I saw, and I think the Lampasas game, they dropped down Latrell from safety to play a true corner. So I'm assuming that's what they're going to do here. They'll put probably Latrell against either Adkism and then Makuba against Lloyd, or switch them up from time to time. But this game on paper is really close. I think Miller's got the advantage in the depth, though. I think that's where Miller's advantage is in the depth and the fact that they're used to playing high-powered offense. Miller does go both ways, though. Sometimes you'll see Andrew Body in at safety every now and then in close games.
Lonnie's playing at cornerback, so is Adrian Lloyd.
Yeah, Lonnie and Lloyd play at cornerback as well. So you essentially have Lonnie and Lloyd, and then McCutcheon and Makuba doing the exact same role for the almost same style of team. So it is an interesting matchup when you look at it on paper.
Justin and I were talking, as soon as we heard the matchup last weekend, and it's kind of our opinion that you're gonna have to see the young pups step up for Miller, which is Damari Lister, who plays who's one of the slot guys out there, Donovan Terrell, the Moreno kid, number 2. The names you haven't really heard about all season, I think those kids are going to have to take their game up another level to kind of compensate, because you figure, just like Justin said, is that Makuba and McCutcheon are gonna clamp down on number 1 and number 1A for Miller, which is Lonnie Atkinson and Adrian Lloyd. And then so the difference you have to make is with the run game. Ethan Greenwood had a very good game last week. I think he scored 5 touchdowns, 4 on the ground, one receiving. But LBJ's also got a pretty good running back. Don't they have a 1,000-yard back there as well?
They do, yeah. And as the season has gone on, it's kind of turned into a 1-2 punch with Daquan Donaldson, who was the guy who kind of ran crazy last week. And then to his lightning, they have a thunder, I guess, if you will, and a sophomore in Cedric Alexander, who's kind of a bowling ball type running back. And it just kind of fits your guys' point that maybe if the upperclassmen in this game kind of cancel each other out, we're going to get to a point where the underclassmen are going to play big roles as well. Alexander, again, who's a sophomore, had over 100 yards, I want to say, last week on the ground. So he's a guy to definitely pay attention to as well.
These teams across the board are so identical. You mentioned Donaldson, and then he's got his 1-2 punch, right? The Thunder. That's essentially what Greenwood is to McCullion down here. McCullion is a lightning quick, elusive back, whereas Ethan, he's going to get 3 to 4 hard yards up the middle, and sometimes more than that. And he's a little shifty for his size, but sophomore, big kid. We've made jokes all year long. One of his offensive linemen said he's a taco away from putting his hand in the dirt. It's just he's that Jerome Bettis style back for this offense. So it's just funny how these teams, if you just look at them on film and on paper, across the board, they match up almost identical to each other. And they're both, to me, in the same situation, right? If you look at – I looked at LBJ's schedule. Lampasas, I still believe, and I still hold it, I think was the best team just all around in this region. I think Miller, the way they're playing right now, obviously that is the best team for me in this region when they're on like they were that Lampasas game. But LBJ wasn't far away from being a district winner in this district, and the same goes for Miller. I think 2 points to Port Lavaca in a shootout, and then they had Cal on the ropes early on in the year when they had Hickman. Of course, Hickman got hurt in that game for Cal Allen, which I think kind of changed Cal Allen's path from there on out. And 2 games like that, and they're the district winners. And LBJ, 1 game against Lampasas, and they're district winners. So there's a lot of I think a lot of people had high expectations too for LBJ, because I remember when we talked to Ace Whitehead, that was his big. He scheduled it. He said that's going to be their tough one this year, was LBJ coming from 5A to 4A. So these teams are just so similar. It's crazy when you start looking at it on paper and on film.
I'll tell you guys this: if Miller can shoot out Lampasas, then LBJ will have its hands full this week, because their defense, for as elite as it is, had trouble slowing down Lampasas and Ace Whitehead. But again, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I didn't think this was the matchup that we were going to be seeing here in the quarterfinal round. I thought it was going to be Lampasas, but you have 2 teams, 2 non-district winners who are really peaking at the right time. They're playing their best football of the season right now, and that ultimately is what matters most.
Yeah. And if you look at it too, The one thing I think where if I was just looking at LBJ, unbiased opinion and whatnot, kind of concern would be possibly their O line. Seems a little. I'm not dogging kids. Average, right, for a team that's going into the fourth round of the playoffs. You look at them and they're not like, you don't look at them and you're like, wow, that offensive line is towering. They got a couple decent sized kids on it, and a couple kids that are just some big bodies. But you don't look at them and you're like, wow, that's a big athletic offensive line that is gonna essentially just power open holes. That would be my one little. I think giving an advantage to Miller. I think Miller's D line is got good size and athletic. Uh, then again, you have three tremendous athletes in the backfield. I think that kind of help counter that for LBJ. So it'll be interesting to see how Jay Sean Trimble's a big part of this defense for Miller, and it's no secret Miller's defenses they've given up a lot of points at certain points in the game. So it'll be interesting. But keep in mind the playoffs, they've done a pretty good job so far of clamping down defensively. I don't know if they're peaking. If they're finally healthy, what the whole situation is with that, but that'll be interesting. As I think we've moved some guys on defensive line. I think we got Brill and Country, they're going both ways. They play offensive line. Start of the playoffs, they put them on D line as well, rotating them in and out to get more bodies and speed in there. So
you see Quan make an appearance here and there as well.
Quan making an appearance too. I was telling Jake before you came on though, I'm watching Kilgore and Lindell. Just bits and pieces of their game. And, me personally, with LBJ playing at such a high level right now and Miller playing at such a high level, I really feel like the winner of this one will represent the right side of the bracket come state. I'm not taking nothing away from Kilgore or Lindell. I just looking at them, just kind of brief glance. I just think LBJ and Miller both look better on tape right now than Lindell or Kilgore. So, this is a big game. We all know that, but this is a good chance for both these teams. So I don't think many people gave them a chance to go to state. It's definitely there. It's a reaching goal that they can grab now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. When the realignment came out, first thing you saw, I don't know what you heard up there in your area, but first thing you heard down here was, oh, Coach Danaher's finally going to get his ring, with Cal making that drop down from 5A to 4A. And, one of the things that we had to keep hitting on was like, man, there's a lot of good teams in this 4A level, Waco, La Vega, Argyle.
I think Argyle's the big dog.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's come to fruition just to show how difficult this 4A D1 level of play is. Are you going to be at this game, Jake, on Saturday?
I will not, because I'm on UT football duties on Saturday. So I wish I could be
you should
there,
flip a coin for that one. Wow.
Yeah, it's a road game, and Texas really has nothing to play for. So maybe I should make a stronger pitch than I've been making so far to be at this game. I can tell you though, as well, honestly, the end of the UT season might match up pretty well with the end of the 4A playoffs. Maybe there's that championship week that UT won't be playing in, so maybe that would be a reason to get out there. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't be there. The last time I saw LBJ was 2 weeks ago when they put that beat down on Alice. It seemed like they were going to score 150 points there for a little bit.
Yeah.
So the LBJ, they do that little pooch kick. They seem to have that down to science at this point. They've been doing that all year long.
Yeah, and I don't think that's by choice. I could be wrong about that. I haven't asked them directly, but kind of looking at their kicking situation, I don't think their head coach Jamal Fenner is too confident in their ability to flip the field with a punt or even convert extra points for that matter. So you'll see LBJ going for 2 a lot as well. Again, it just comes with the territory of not being a super deep team. And I think he trusts his playmakers a little bit more, especially to convert 2-point conversions than he does to have his place kicker try and get one through. But yes, you'll see a lot of those pooch punts for LBJ.
And then
situations.
What do you think this team offensively, their strong suit is? We noticed last week they ran a lot of read option with the quarterback and the running backs, and then you see them aired out to McCutcheon and Makuba here and there, but it looks like to me they get a lot of quick plays into space with some just wide receiver screens, and then a lot of just read option. Is that pretty much their identity right there? Do they tend to lean more towards the run, or do they like to put it
I
in
would.
the air?
It's a lot of quick game stuff. That's the one thing that we've seen translate week to week. Other than that, it's a lot of it's based on the opponents. So if Fenner thinks that his offensive line is overmatched by Miller's defensive line, maybe that becomes even more of a focus where he's getting the ball out quickly to McCutcheon and Makuba on wide receiver bubble screens and quick outs and things like that. The district that LBJ played in did not challenge them aside from Lampasas in that regard. So they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. Maybe they were building for the playoffs and preparing to face a team like Miller where that quick game was going to be even more important. But I would say that right now, that's the identity of this offense is just getting the ball in the hands of their playmakers and saying, hey, we believe in your athleticism. You're a 4-star recruit for a reason. Go make a play.
Outside of Makuba and McCutcheon at receiver, who else can we expect to see some plays from?
Two guys actually, Faison Washington, big play threat, and then Danny Davis as well as someone who has really taken on more of a role as the season's gone on. I want to say they're both juniors. Washington could be a senior, but I know Davis is not a senior. So they've become more and more involved in the offense as the season's gone on. Both very talented playmakers who would be the stars of really any other 4A team if you didn't have these 4-star recruits lining up right next to them.
That's a pretty solid take on that. I mean,
Yeah. Well, Jake, we appreciate you taking the time to come on. God, that's a whole lot of knowledge, man. And we're glad we have this medium now, so we can reach out to you guys and give us a little more insight. Because right now, I mean, we're just kind of flying blind based on what we've seen. So it's good to get that inside perspective of that program and actually see what makes that program tick and what they bring to our guys come Saturday.
Yeah, and as we touched on, guys, really exciting matchup. I honestly have no idea who I think is going to win the game because I think both teams right now are playing at an exceptionally high level and probably their best football of the season.
I was telling Justin last night. I think the first 3 series of this game is gonna just it'll tell you who's gonna win it because I'm on the same way. You know, I would have rather had Miller seen another team this week because they're identical, just like Justin said. They're identical. They're just as scary, and yeah, there's no guarantees.
I like it because I think it's gonna give Body finally. I mean, if Body comes out and plays how he's played all year long and puts up his numbers, I mean, you can't argue.
Yeah, you know what? I can't even believe we haven't hit on him yet.
You're talking about 2 D1 secondary players going to premier colleges, right? And this guy's struggling to get a D1 offer at quarterback, and I think he comes out and plays and slings it around. I think that opens up some more opportunities at the next level. I mean, you're gonna have to. There's got to be scouts at this game. There's no way there's not.
So he could
Lonnie and Lloyd a lot of exposure as well.
He's definitely the X factor that we hadn't even talked about, right? So if you take away the ball in the air from him and you lock down his number 1 and number 2, I mean, he can beat you just with his feet, right? I mean, the last couple of games, actually, he didn't run a whole lot last week. I think he only ran for 38 yards.
I'll give Bernie credit. Bernie did a pretty good job defensively. They had a much better defensive line than I think I maybe even thought when I watched them on tape. They did a good job of containing him for the most part. But then at the same factor, they gave up a lot of yards to Greenwood.
Yep.
Right. So they may have focused more on him and didn't pay much attention to Greenwood. And I mean, look at that. They gave Greenwood 5 touchdowns.
And one more thing to piggyback off that. Again, I didn't cover LBJ last week, but I was reading about the game, and I think it was Rick from The Statesman who said that Cal Allen didn't complete a pass all game long last week. And obviously that was a little bit of style and personal preference with what they're doing on offense. But it also goes to show that this LBJ secondary is legit and teams don't want to throw on them.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think this is the best secondary that Miller's going to see in the last 3 years, hands down.
Yeah.
I do personally feel like if Miller comes out and plays a complete game and then they play the way they played against Lampasas, I got them as a +14. I think just off depth, I think if your younger guys step up, Latrell and Makuba are only two men back there. So there's going to be opportunity to move the ball and score. And Andrews, he's not number 5 on the all-time passing list for no reason. And Coach Evans and Coach Chavez do an absolute great job of dialing up plays to their opponents, weakness, so to speak. So, like I told Jake, I said the biggest heel this year for Miller has been when they start making their penalties. If they start putting the ball on the ground, they get 3+ turnovers, they're in a lot of trouble. I think every game they lost this year was 3+ turnovers. Yeah. They've done a good job so far, knocking on wood, that they've held on to that ball, and that's with any team, right? But I just feel like if they come and play that complete game that we saw them play against line passes, I just feel like the depth and tiring down this LBJ team, that's a huge factor. Is a 14+ favorite for Miller. So I'm excited to see it. Disappointed we won't get to be there in person, but I do think it's going to be a great matchup across the board.
So we got a take here from a mutual opponent who will remain nameless. When asked, they've seen both teams, and it's their take is hard to tell. Miller's offensive scheme plays into the strength of LBJ. LBJ has the athletes to cover the wide receivers of Miller. Miller will win if they can load the box and let body run. They'll have to wear down LBJ. So that's
pretty much exactly what we talked about.
Yeah. So Jake, again, thanks for taking the time out today. We appreciate it. Definitely like to have you on again sometime, maybe as the season goes on.
5A 6A is coming up.
5A 6A is coming up, right? So we've got some teams down here that are if you believe projections from the preseason magazines that are projected to take the region as well. So yeah, it's definitely be good to touch base again as we get further down that playoff road. Again, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be on again soon. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right. So Spud, we've got, Shiner Refugio, right?
Am I good to head out, guys?
Yeah, you're good, Jake. Thanks again, man.
Cool.
Thanks
awesome.
a lot, man.
Bye, guys.
So I was looking at and we've talked about this. This has been circled on everybody's calendar since last year, right? Since probably that last second ticked off the game last year and that wild finish there at DW Rutledge last year. I was doing some just kind of all-time records, right? So since 2014, Refugio leads the series 6-1, and they've played twice in 2015. They were in the same district and they met again in the playoffs, and they split it that year. Refugio lost the regular season game and won the one that counted in the playoffs. It's if you go back to last year, everybody was saying these next 2 years, it's Shiner's best chance, to win a state championship. Mike Foreman on the from the Advocate, one of the friends of the show.
That's who we should have.
Yeah, we should have reached out to Mike. Sorry, Mike, if you're watching, we kind of dropped the ball. 21 seniors on this Comanche team, and it's no wonder why they've been saying these next couple of years are Shiner's best chance. They have a very big senior class. You figure, man, at a 2A D1, what's their roster size? Maybe 40,
They got a lot of kids for the size of that program. When you look at it as a 2A school, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
We're just talking about LBJ and a Southside team that were in 5A with about 30 kids.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference. And Refugio's the same way. They don't have a lot of kids suit out.
Yeah.
I think the strong suits are for being in 2A. It is you see a lot of 2A players, but they got some depth and athletes at that. A lot of times when you look at like 2A and 3A, we were just talking about Brooks from Hallettsville. I tweeted out last week, at that level of ball, one star athlete, and you saw it in Whittington, and I'm not taking anything away from that Cuero team, it can literally transform you into just a state champion because of a amazing athlete.
Yep.
That, and Whittington was tremendous, and he dominated that state game. Brooks has the same opportunity at Hallettsville. So then you come down here to these 2A programs like Refugio and Shiner. And heck, Shiner last year had a 3-headed monster in the backfield with Dante. Was it Dontavian Clay?
Danye Taylor.
Okay, Danye Taylor. Uh, I mean, when I was watching the game last year, I was just mesmerized. I mean, he literally was walking all over that Refugio defense. And that Refugio defense is no slouch. I mean, we've seen them the last couple of years. I mean, just the last 20 years, Refugio's always had good defenses and good offenses. And
Yeah.
and to see what he did last year, it's still a shock to me they lost that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, wow, it's over. Okay.
A little chicanery there at the end. I mean, it depends who you talk to. They should have lost the game, right?
Refugio's done, and then
happened, yeah.
it's a fumble and the ball don't lie, right? It was fate. It wasn't Shiner's year. Refugio took the title. I think there's a lot of emotions probably this year from Shiner. You got to think 21 seniors means you probably had about 21 juniors on that team as well last year.
Yep.
And sophomores that got to witness and feel that loss when they thought they had it, and if you're sitting there as a junior and sophomore and then you see Refugio go on and they win state, right? They kind of breezed right through who is that Region 3 team they've seen they match up with?
Was it Post?
No. Post was state. Who is that team?
Oh, St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, right? And they kind of breezed through them, and then honestly they handled Post. Ochoa handled Post pretty well. I mean, it wasn't like I never felt in that Post game like, oh man, this ain't looking good.
Yeah.
I did Shiner game. I was like, well, this ain't good. So you have to think that in their head they're thinking, wow, we were literally 2 plays away from a state championship, right? Yep. So a lot of emotion I think you're going to see from the Shiner team, against Refugio, which could play against them.
It can.
They're 1-6 in the last 7 years or 5 years or 6 years. I'm sorry, against Refugio. So they got their number, right? And obviously it's no secret. Our first year, we tell the story to everyone. Coach Heron almost ran us out of there because we might have been Shiner trying to scout his team, right? So there's blood in this little matchup. I think that I told people early on in the year that to me in this matchup was how well Caleb played going into this year, quarterback play. I think Refugio athlete-wise across the board, they may be a little better. Jordan and Antoine were younger last year. Where they really excelled was the fact that Austin had experience, a lot of it. He could throw the ball and he ran really well. So depending on how Caleb continues to play, in which he's been playing great all year, it's going to be a close game.
Yeah. Definitely biggest game of his career so far, of his varsity career. Yeah.
I was, I told some people that I wasn't too worried about Shiner round 4. I was being more worried about, I was looking at Timpson from Region 3. I just feel like Refugio's got Shiner's number, even when Shiner has great years. Maybe overlooking them again. And then last week they dropped that 50-something-0 win over Mason, which if you're familiar with Mason and Refugio, Mason usually has pretty good teams. I haven't followed them all year. I'm curious to see if it was the Mason that we know or if that was just a shell of themselves.
Yeah.
Got blown out. So that kind of made me start thinking like, okay, maybe this might be a little bit of a challenge at hand for Refugio. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. I'm going with the Cats. I think the Cats by at least a touchdown. So we'll see, right? I mean,
well, you said earlier, they had a 3-headed monster last year. This year they've got a 5-headed monster. Zane Rhodes, Doug Brooks, Dalton Brooks, Trevor Haynes, and Tyler Palmer, as of last week, not including last week's stats, have rushed for 3,000 yards and 52 touchdowns over the year. So they're spreading the ball around very well. So they do have the dogs again in the backfield to compete. Kind of like what you said, as the season went on, we right away thought it was Shiner's year because, the question mark at quarterback there at Refugio. And just like you said, and we had Caleb on earlier in the season, 2 weeks ago, he's performed well above his first year starter. Yeah, way above his expectation. You couldn't have asked for anything more, I think, as a rookie starter coming in, filling in for Austin Ochoa, the state game MVP last year. And, those are pretty big shoes to fill, just like we told them.
Oh yeah.
I'm very comfortable saying that Refugio can take this game now. Seeing the way he's played this season and the way they've gone through the playoffs. Everybody always, the big knock on Refugio is, well, their district, they don't play anybody, which is true, but what you expect in districts like that is they handle business, and they have handled business. They have not struggled against anybody all year, not even in the playoffs.
No.
They've done what they're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, it's noted they always knock Refugio for that. But if you go back and you're talking about that 2015 season when they lost to Shiner in the district and then beat them in the playoffs, for a little bit there, they had Shiner in district. Yeah. Was Weimer? I don't know if Weimer was in there, but they had a hell of a district.
It was pretty tough. Yeah.
They never once were not district champ, I don't think, in that district. So
it might have been the year they lost to Shiner.
I think Shiner dropped a game though elsewhere that Refugio picked up. It might have been a 3-way tie in that. We'd have to go back and look, but I want to say they dropped a game to someone and it was a 3-way tie. But I'm not 100% sure on that.
I'm pulling it up. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Reference it.
Keep talking. Go ahead. I'm pulling it up.
I mean, other than that, I think obviously if Jordan Kelly's on his game, it's going to be huge for Refugio. They need him to play to his standard. Antoine, obviously, is a big factor and part of this Refugio offense and defense. So, if those two guys are clicking, Refugio's a tough team to beat. And
big time.
I think Jordan talked about last or 2 weeks ago when we had him on the show is that their defense ain't getting enough credit. Their defense has done an absolutely outstanding job. Coach Boxell and company have done a good job on clamping down on opponents this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they scheme and game plan for this quote unquote 5-headed monster that Shiner's bringing.
Yeah, Shiner won district that year. They went 5-0.
Okay.
But I mean, same thing. Refugio was their closest game of the year that year, 30-19. Everybody else, they kind of.
What was the playoff matchup like?
Rivera 68-0, Moody 53-13, Flatonia 41-7, and Refugio lost 17-14.
Got the number when it counts, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. I've always said that undefeated's nice, but it's the second season. That's the one that really counts, right?
Well, it's playing out into the 5A with LBJ and Miller.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone keeps wanting to reference back to Miller.
We keep circling back to it.
But who's in the playoffs still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and a lot of folks don't. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah. So Miller lost to Port Lavaca, and they lost to Cal Allen, and they lost to Vets. Vets is a number 7 team in 5A. Port Lavaca was a top 5 team in 4A. Cal Allen was a top 5 team in 4A, and they had a hiccup against Rockport.
But you look at that Rockport team, they should probably still be in the playoffs, if not made it at least round 3.
Yeah. Considering all the injuries they've had. Yeah.
No, and that's talking about them losing their primary tight end.
Their primary tight end, their primary running back.
And they lost one of their primary running backs. They lost 2 amazing players. Very young, they're pretty young team.
Yeah. Small team.
Again, that was one of the best games I've seen Coach Seibert call. And it was Rockport's night that night. They from the start to finish they outplayed Miller. But it wasn't like everyone was like, oh, you lost to Rockport. Look at Rockport's last 5 years.
Yeah,
they're all winning. They're district champ winning teams.
Yeah,
and when they've gotten deep in playoffs, they've only lost to great teams. They lost.
And they were almost
last year.
If you remember back, they were almost in that little SEC district. If it wasn't for that last minute shuffle realignment, they were slotted to be in that district with Miller, Cal Allen, Rockport, or Alice, the little SEC that we're calling it. Exactly. I mean, everybody's saying, "Oh, they're a small school." Yeah, they're the biggest. They are the biggest 4A D2 school in the state.
Yep.
So let's not forget that.
Carthage is pretty big too for 4A D. They dropped down as well.
Yeah,
scary for 4A D2 teams.
Yeah, big time. All right, so I think that's about all the time we got. I don't think we can harp on anything else. I mean, there was some coaching rustling going on yesterday that kind of got, or the day before that kind of got, the fire got put out on that one, but more to come. Right, stay tuned on that one. Spud, you got anything else before we go?
No, I'm gonna finish with I got Refugio +7 and I got Miller +14.
Yeah, I'm not going to give a plus on Refugio. I think Refugio takes it. It could be.
I'm sorry. Okay, people might dog me on that. Betting terms, that would mean I have them as underdogs. I got Refugio winning by 7+ at least, and I got Miller winning by 14 plus at least. So
That I'd like to see Miller win. Like I said, I just to be the hometown guy, I'm going to pick Miller. But I think that game's going to be decided in the first couple drives, and you're going to see how it's going to go. But yeah, go with the Coastal Bend, right? Even if they were the overmatched team, I'm gonna go with the Coastal Bend team. Guys, thanks for tuning in this week. Hopefully, we'll be back with a couple more teams still playing, going towards week 16. Justin, I'll see you tonight at work, guys. This will probably air tomorrow, which is what's tomorrow? Thursday? Today's Wednesday?
yep.
Yeah, expect to drop sometime Thursday morning. Guys, again, thanks. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Peace.